Update from Catherine Nicholson in Cannes. It's been more than a month since Algeria's president has been seen in public. Abdelaziz Bouteflika officially recovering in a Paris military hospital from what's described as a minor stroke. Authorities appear a bit edgy. 2 newspapers have been censored for suggesting the 76-year-old's condition is far worse than said. Algeria's longest-serving president may be the last of the generation that fought in his country's war of independence from France. For the name of his successor, well, all eyes are on Algeria's secretive and powerful military elite. Algeria, the one country in the region that's mostly remained immune to change since the start of the Arab Spring. Algeria, an oil-rich regional power of 36 million people that's kept reforms mostly under wraps despite an aging elite governing over a young and often impoverished population. Is change on the way? If so, what kind of change in a country that suffered through a decade of civil war between Islamists and the army at the end of the 90s? Today in the France 24 debate, we'll be plotting Algeria's course. And with us, Karim Amelal, lecturer at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, recent founder of, we could say it, shoufshouf.com. What does shouf mean?
It's a media online.
What does shouf mean?
Shouf means look at that.
Look at that.
In Algeria, when something is very important, we say shouf shouf. So we insist on take a look.
Okay, take a look. Also with us, Alexandre Kateb, author of The New World Powers, Why the BRICS Are Changing the World. Welcome back to the France 24. And political scientist Pierre Conessa, author of The Manufacturing of the Enemy, or How to Kill with a Clean Conscience. Welcome back, sir.
Hello.
From Algiers, we're pleased to be joined by Malik Sarai, former advisor to Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Thank you for joining us from the Algerian capital. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. As we said, Abdelaziz Bouteflika hasn't been seen in public since April the 17th. Karim Amelal, what do we know? What we have these official communiques, and yet we see this sort of surge of speculation. Why is that?
One of the problems is that we don't know precisely. We don't know what's happening now. We know that the president is still in France, in Val-de-Grâce.
The military hospital.
Exactly. And for months now, we know that he suffered from a stroke, a mini stroke, as Algerian authorities said. But that's it. And this is a big question now, because we know that under this process, a transition has to be implemented. And the question is by who, and who will be the next one.
All right, who will be the next one? Elections in Algeria scheduled for early next year. Exactly. The current media blackout keeping many off guard in a nation where the elite seems to sometimes thrive on secrecy.
April 17th, Abdelaziz Bouteflika attends the funeral of one of his predecessors. The Algerian president has not appeared in public since. After suffering a minor stroke, he was hospitalized in Paris 3 weeks ago. And at the weekend, authorities prevented an Algerian newspaper from announcing that Bouteflika had fallen into a coma. Not an act of censorship, according to the FLN ruling party, who condemned what it sees as an attempt to destabilize the state. The opposition, on the other hand, is calling for the release of Bouteflika's medical record and for a transition of power following Article 88 of the Constitution.
The leader of the Senate would temporarily take over in the event of the death or incapacity of the president to rule.
And this is the man who would then become interim leader, Abdelkader Ben Salah. But some Algerian media have warned that he might not be allowed to take over, as he was born in Morocco and naturalized only in the 1960s. With secrecy surrounding Bouteflika's health, hard to say whether the leader will be able to stand for re-election in April 2014.
All right, that report there, read by Clovis Kazali. Malik Sarai, what's it been like today in terms of what you're hearing on the other side of the Mediterranean? All right, we have trouble with the connection. We'll try to fix that as soon as possible. Pierre Conessa, when you look at this speculation, it's not the first time there's been speculation over the Algerian president's health?
As far as I remember, I think it's the third or fourth time that he's spending some medical assistance in Val de Grace, and last time I was in 2 or 3, he spent more than 40 days in the.
And this was before he was re-elected to a third term, and we've seen him since in public. He was in December alongside the French president when he came to visit him.
Yes, but I think, well, as a Frenchman, it's difficult to give lessons to an Algerian because you know that we have all in mind, the Pompidou affairs and the Mitterrand affairs, which mean that the Val de Grace is probably one of the most
hushed up at the time,
the most secret hospital in the world. So I think that Bouteflika could be quiet now. Nobody knows precisely what his health, but that's quite worried from the public Algerian opinion because nobody knows who could be the candidates for the election. Just remember that Bouteflika has been elected with more than 80 or 90% on each election, which means that there is
90.4% last time.
Yeah, which means that it looks like a democratic election, but it wasn't, which means there are no real political life in Algeria. And that's a problem.
Do you agree, Karim Amelal, there's no political life in Algeria right now?
Yes, I agree. But the fact is that the power, the leadership in Algeria is divided into 2 parts, a formal one, a legal one, and a hidden one. And the question is that Algeria is not really a democracy at this stage. It's obvious.
So if I understand you correctly,
a process is engaged. Algeria is involved in a process, in a democratic process. And press, for instance, freedom of press, freedom of the press. In Algeria, contrary to Egypt, contrary to Morocco, contrary to Tunisia, of course, last Tunisia, not Tunisia, of course, the Ben Ali one, the press is quite free. And in Algiers, like in Oran or in big cities in Algeria, you can talk about the power, the leadership, President Bouteflika, you can talk about the army, the DRS, the Secret Service. So there is an ongoing process which is involved, engaged for years. But of course, this is an obviousness. Algeria is not a real democracy. But in terms of transparency, and I agree with you, France has just no lessons to give. Remember, of course, Val de Grace stories and Mitterrand daughter and illness, but also Cahuzac more recently, or Dominique Strauss-Kahn affairs.
Those are political cover-ups. You have them in every country.
It's also a culture of
But if I understand the two
secret.
of you correctly, you're not banking much on the president of the Senate constitutionally taking over. Should there be a problem? Alexandre Kateb, do you ever see the Constitution being respected and the President of the Senate taking over in case there's a power vacuum before the election?
I mean, I think the legal and the constitutional questions really are not the issue here. Whatever the outcome, it will
all of
be
you are just ignoring
legalized, it will be constitutionalized if you want. They will find a legal solution or legal window to present something that would be suitable to the public and to the people. But the real issue, as was mentioned before, is the real nature of the power and the center of power in this country. There is not one center of power. There are many centers of powers, and this is what makes it complicated. Nobody really knows how this balance of powers moves together, and who drives really the keys, and who can influence the changes, whether it is in the military establishment, in the new military establishment, or the old one, whether it is the political figures that were associated with the FLN or the other parties or quasi parties that were created in the 90s. So it's very difficult to see really what kind of transition could emerge out of this confusion.
All right, confusion because as you were just saying, secrecy at the top, but a lot of free expression. Some Algerians, by the way, showing a distinct lack of reverence when they read those official health bulletins. One person tweeting, Bouteflika is fine, the proof, no wildlife documentaries on state TV. While Malik says it's official, Wally retires in favor of Bouteflika, who's much harder to find. France 24's Cyril Vanier asked the editor of one of those two censored newspapers about the French Foreign Ministry's a denial this Monday that Bouteflika had been secretly flown back home last week.
It
would have been easy for authorities to discredit our claims. They could have shown a few pictures of the president or issued a communique from the president's doctor. But the president's doctor isn't speaking. The presidency isn't communicating. We're told that he's resting in a flat in Paris. Why? Isn't the Zeralda residence good enough? Why are Algerians dying because they don't have the means to stay healthy? And he gets to stay at a military hospital and take a 2-week rest in Paris.
All right. Karim Amelad, I've spoken to some Algerians today in the newsroom who said to me, just because the Algerian authorities aren't speaking doesn't necessarily mean that the president's in critical conditions. The authorities, one of their modus operandi is to thrive on not saying anything and letting everyone speculate.
Exactly. But we have to insist on the fact that now it's a rumor, okay? Maybe after Bouteflika, it will be Bouteflika again. The president is said to be ill for a long time, for 2005, 2006, and so on. And of course, that kind of situation nowadays is not easy to manage in Algeria, but everywhere in the world. We have to keep in mind what happened in Israel with Sharon, what happened, of course, in Cuba with Castro. So it's 1 month since the president has been hospitalized in Val-de-Grâce. And of course, the Algerian authorities now can't say anything more than what they are saying because they have to prepare the next step. And the next step, and that we have to discuss now, is the very interrogation point.
All right, so Pierre Conessa.
Just one point. I quite agree with my friend. I mean, in Algeria, the press is quite open-minded and free-speaking press. That's right. When I was explaining that there is no political life in Algeria, in which country a guy could be elected 3 times with more than 80% of the votes? In Russia, yes, it's possible. But there are no Medvedev in Algeria today, which means that Bouteflika, as soon as a prime minister is coming, some serious guy candidates, it had been eliminated by Bouteflika itself, which means that there are no regular possibility for election without any turmoil, without any demonstration, etc. in Algeria. That's the problem. That's why I was explaining there are no political life in Algeria. But you're right. I mean, Algeria is more democratic than it was with Ben Ali, the regime.
All right, I want your reaction, Pierre Conessa, to a statement that Bouteflika himself made. Before last year's legislative elections, which the ruling FLN won handsomely, the Algerian president already at the time said there was a need for a handover.
From now on, I'm expecting young people to take part in our society by joining an association, a party, or a national organisation, to organise themselves and to take on future responsibilities. My generation is finished. Our time is over. Our time is over. Our time is over.
Is his generation, is it over for his generation?
Well, you know, Bouteflika was the youngest of his generation. But there are no new generation. In Algeria, when a guy has some possibility, he make business. He don't make politics. Because all the channels of politics are blocked by the old generation. You understand what I mean? That's why I think that there are no regular process of succession. That's why there is a problem. But I think that Bouteflika will done when he will decide it.
There is a constitutional reform that is underway. And normally it should provide a solution to that problem with the appointment of a vice president, number 2 of the state. But this is just an ongoing or underway reform, and it hasn't been voted at this stage.
Alexandre Kateb, your reaction to what Pierre Conessa just said about...
It's true that there is really no kind of generational change in the political stuff.
What is it? The average age in the cabinet, according to the AP, is around 70 years old.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there are civil servants who are younger, but they are not involved in the political process, and nobody is kind of put in front of the media to be the heir apparent of the system, like you have Medvedev in Russia, or you have in other countries. But there is a thriving civil society that has been developing over the last years. There is a business community.
And do you ask some of those young entrepreneurs? Do you want to go into politics? Do you ever ask them the question?
They do politics without entering the political process, because they know it's blocked so far. But they do politics because everything you say is political in this country, and you cannot do anything, even business, if you don't get political approval from the parties, from the political establishment. And there is also a non-political opposition, so to say, in the trade unions. There are young trade unionists, young activists that take to the street, that make hunger strikes, that defend the workers. So there is this grassroots movements. What is missing right now is a kind of new political leaders that could coalesce together all this opposition, all this civil society, and try to bring an alternative to the current system.
So it's quite troubling what Alexandre Kateb is saying, because, in other words, there's a power vacuum after this old generation.
Exactly, and we have to say or to add that the other candidates like Ouyahia, and former Prime Minister, and Belkhadem, also former Prime Minister, have been ousted by President Bouteflika. So the next step, the succession, is very empty, as you said, and this is very dramatic and worrying. That's why I think we don't have to wish, of course, the President Bouteflika death, because as you say at the beginning of the program, next election is
early next year.
Exactly, will take place next year, 1 year, and there is a big vacuum nowadays if the coma is confirmed and that kind of stuff. And as you know, behind the scene, there are many factions, hidden factions within the army, within the system, within the regime that are looking for that, to take the control of the situation once more. Because in Algeria, like in 1978, 79, after the Boumediene death, it has been exactly the same thing, and it triggers the designation.
We're going to talk about that the shadow of the military, all the secrecy. When we come back, you're watching the France 24 debate.